diversity has failed, that multiculturalism, which is better stated multiracialism, not only is a policy that doesn't work, but it's beginning to cause open conflict in Western countries. The United States has been the crusader state for open borders, for multiculturalism and multiracialism. Assimilation, which has really become brand Americana, which has been evangelized by Euro elites across the European continent, is now boomeranging. Welcome back to Men and the City. It is Saturday, the 24th of August at approximately sunset in Argentina. And I timestamp it because there is another stabbing attack, it seems, this time in Germany, not in England. And so it is a very fluid situation. However, this is what I know as of today.
German prosecutors have identified the 26-year-old suspect in the stabbing that killed 3 and injured 8. He's known as by the authorities as Issa al-Hajj. Now, police say the man has admitted to the crime, with Islamic State terror group claiming responsibility for the attack.
Here we go again. I want to begin the context for this video with Wir schaffen das. That was what Angela Merkel said in response to a massive influx of refugees on the heels of a regional catastrophe, a civil war in Syria, destabilization in Iraq, among other countries, that then sent at least 1 million, probably a lot more, refugees of various types, Arabs from Iraq, from Syria, other parts of the Middle East, North Africans of various types, that all ended up in Germany because they were welcomed by Angela Merkel, who declared Wir schaffen das, which means we can manage.
Boston has a partner city, which is Hamburg, very comparable in size. They took in 30,000. Every day, 400-500 arrive. Hamburg, like a number of other German cities, they have changed their local laws to requisition public buildings that are not used, or private buildings, halls. Fairgrounds are now being used. You have big halls with 500 people, with cots, mothers, children, husbands, young men, all together. Muslims, non-Muslims. They're all traumatized, they're all exhausted, they all have to be taken care of.
So over the last 10 years, Germany, like the rest of Europe, has experienced a massive influx of refugees. But there's more. Going back to 1961, when a guest worker program of sorts between Turkey and Germany was signed, sending large numbers of Turks, primarily men, into Germany to ostensibly help Germany recover from a shortage of manpower in the aftermath of World War II. Now, that began a half-a-century relationship between Germany and Turkey that persists to this day. And as it stands, I believe there are 2.5 million to 4 million, those are the numbers that I gather, of Turks living in Germany today. And they do constitute the largest minority group in Germany. That, as well, has caused serious problems. So in Germany, over the last half a century, as these various groups have begun to establish themselves, you've seen an uptick in criminality. You've seen disproportionate representatives of these various groups detained and put in prison. In fact, in some cases, depending on which part of Germany you're talking about, there have been German police organizations, departments that requested Turkish police come into Germany to police Turkish areas because German police felt vulnerable in some of these areas. Remember that the police in Germany, like the police in England, are not as well equipped. They don't carry the kind of armaments and firepower that they do in the United States, for example. In any case, What has occurred in Germany is the same thing that's happening in France, the same thing that's happening in England and the United States and Canada.
We had the famous Christmas market attack that was in 2016, which was also murderous. We had in 2016, so in the same year, we had an attack on a train with a man wielding an axe and a knife. In 2018, there was a man driving a van into a crowd in Münster.
And that has been what some people call identity disaggregation. When you diversify an area with different groups of people, rather than integrate, their sense of identity actually becomes more exaggerated, more intense. They become hyper-conscious. This is exactly what has happened in Germany. So the Turks in Germany are more Turkish in many ways than the Turks who live in Turkey. The same kind of effect exists among Algerians and Moroccans and other groups that live in France. And my guess is a very similar phenomenon exists in England with Indians and Pakistanis and various other groups of foreigners who become, quite naturally, I would say, hyper-aware of their identity because they're living in somebody else's country. The uptick of all of this, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is that diversity has failed, that multiculturalism, which is better stated multiracialism, not only is a policy that doesn't work, but it's beginning to cause open conflict in Western countries where European populations, Germans included, are beginning to feel that they're losing control of their own nations.
There will be a fair few people looking at going back in time, not too far back, and looking at what Angela Merkel did in response to the crisis by Assad in Syria, and actually bringing a lot of people over from Syria. Do you think actually the rise of certain political parties in Germany can be directly linked to the anger that is felt in large parts of the country right now?
Which is a very real feeling that is only going to be accelerated in the coming months because of a deteriorating fiscal economic situation that grips all of these countries, the United States included. Because you have to remember that what's holding these societies together, other than censorship and a bunch of elites that smash anybody who raises objections to mass immigration or raises questions about it, in addition to that, they sort of mollify these social ailments with redistribution, with government programs. That's how they have temporarily bandaged some of these wounds. But these governments are running out of money, as we know. Hold that thought because we're going to come back to it in just a minute. All of this, ladies and gentlemen, ties specifically to the United States. The United States has been the crusader state for open borders, for multiculturalism, and yes, multiracialism. And for us, that really started in the 1960s with the Immigration and Nationality Act. And I think it's crucial here to acknowledge that that act was pushed by people like Senator Jacob Javits, for instance, from New York, who knew quite well what the implications would be of changing the immigration policy in the United States to one rooted in national origin, one that was very restrictive, that would basically bring in peoples that were of common descent and common origin, and threw it out because, in their words, it was racist and based on the idea that some stand above others. We know the rest of the story. We know that a trickle, which is what they claimed would come, became a deluge. The United States is the hill that we're all dying on because the United States has presented this mass immigration as a success when it has been anything but. And so now we, like the Europeans, have serious racial conflict unfolding across American cities, not just along the southern border, but everywhere. You're seeing stabbing attacks, you're seeing violence, you're seeing the increased homelessness and a sense of anxiety.
Natasha, Teresa, the video is so disturbing. In fact, we can only show you certain portions of it. There are two main parts to the story right now. It is that the authorities have charged the man they arrested out here with 1 count of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. The other part of the story is that we have been reporting from this block behind us several times in the past year, talking about concerns from residents who say that if something isn't done to clean up the streets, something bad will happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the point of all of this is that assimilation, which has really become brand Americana, which has been evangelized by Euro elites across the European continent, is now boomeranging. And so we're beginning to see the unwind of those policies turn these countries upside down. However, as I said 2 weeks ago, the good news is that these countries are fast awakening. Populations are figuring out what has happened. And that very identity disaggregation, which eats away at the prospect of assimilation and therefore makes mass immigration a weapon of destruction, it's also affecting the national consciousness of Germans and Britons and Swedes and Frenchmen and Dutchmen and Americans and Canadians the world over. We are awakening to this. And so we are on the cusp of an explosion in a new direction. Now, to get back to the financial economic context, all of these countries are running out of money, but importantly, we're headed into a recession. The United States economic numbers are not good.
I think the US economy is slowing faster and in a broader sense than most people anticipated, including the Fed. And I think that the market is catching up to that possibility, which has become a probability.
Germany is already in a recession.
German economy has been stuck in stagnation for some time, and this is getting worse. That's what the data is telling.
France is teetering. The UK has a financial emergency at its doorstep.
With exclusive access to citizens' advice and the clients that they're working with, this is the story of the UK's emerging debt crisis, told by the people behind the headlines.
That is going to be the trigger that's going to blow up these legacy governments. Because, as we all know, there is no release valve for what's happening right now, meaning there's no real political opposition substantial enough to implement the kind of reform that would ameliorate the social situation that we're facing, the crisis that we're facing. And what that means specifically is mass repatriation. That is the answer. The cause of anti-immigrant sentiment is immigration. The problem that we're dealing with is multiculturalism or multiracialism, as I pointed out a moment ago. The only thing that's held us together, other than censorship and the imposition by these very tyrannical elites who all believe, one way or the other, in the dystopian fantasy that they've imposed upon us, is redistribution. And that depends on the economy. Economy generates the tax revenue that funds the redistribution that holds us all together. That is rapidly deteriorating as we speak. So, we are months away from this, folks. Months away. Be prepared, because the whole world is about to change, I think, in the next 6 to 12 months. And when it does, Europa and Western civilization is going to awaken in ways that I don't think anybody currently believes are possible. Stay tuned for more, and we'll talk soon.